Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm Ekaansh. How many of you are React developers? Okay, how many of you are not React developers? Awesome. So a mixed crowd. That's what we like to see. So we'll be talking about full stack type safety. Anyone of you who's heard this term before or used some of the things around this before? Show of hands. Perfect. That's exactly the type of crowd I'd expect to be here. So we'll talk about full stack, whichever spectrum you belong to. There should be something to take away from here. And I like to talk about this as move fast and break nothing, based off of Facebook's move fast and break things. So let's get started. That's me. I'm a developer advocate at Agora. So I'm obsessed with developer experience and making developers' productivity better with like tools and things. I speak JavaScript, TypeScript, and I also maintain some of the UI kits and do a bit of open source. So what does full stack look like from like full stack type safety? Let's define full stack, right? So there's usually your three pieces or three layers. There's your front end client, there's your back end, and there's your database. You have something like an API communicating between your front end and your back end, and you have some sort of a query that you use to interact with the database. So far, so good. Now, what is type safety? Does anyone know what's type safety? Show of hands. Do you want to yell what's type safety? It's type safe, right? It's hard to describe. So it's why people like TypeScript. How many of you like TypeScript? How many of you hate TypeScript? Okay, we'll get you around. But Wikipedia defines this as the extent to which a language discourages or prevents type errors, right? So this is when you do like a type conversion. For example, you define an integer and then you dynamically allocate it as a string, and then you run into all sorts of errors. That's what is the problem with not having a type safe language. And JavaScript itself has always been very type unsafe. So for like, just dumb it down, it's the red squiggly line that you see in your compiler, which tells you that, hey, you're writing a bug and you should probably read your code again. For example, if you try to tell me that Angular is the best framework, your compiler will yell at you and tell you that you're wrong. Okay, awesome. So coming back to full stack type safety, right? I like to think of it as when you're crossing a boundary in your stack. So let's say this is our stack and the red squares are your boundaries. Whenever you're crossing a boundary in your stack, do you have access to the previous system's type information? And this feels like a mouthful, but essentially what we're saying is when you're going from your backend to your front end, do you still have access to your backend's types? Let's say your backend is in Node.js, or let's take an example, okay? Let's say we have React, Node, and MySQL. Let's say you write some types in Node. Do you have that information in your React front end? Usually not, right? Because you'll send like a JSON and then you parse it on your front end, and you lose all sort of like type information that you could have inferred from your backend. And that's sort of the problem in that layer. Let's talk about your database and your backend. So traditionally, SQL has other data types like varchar and like other data specific types, which are not part of JavaScript. So usually what happens is you do like a query and you try to insert a string inside a date and things just blow up. So what if you could avoid this using like a simple tool? How many of you have heard of Prisma or an ORM or a query builder? Cool. So Prisma is sort of this layer which sits on top of your database, and it lets you interact with your database in JavaScript or in TypeScript. So you can define your table or your model with TypeScript. So for example, I can say title is string, and that doesn't mean like you don't have to map it to a varchar or define the length of it. It just infers what the data type should be from your TypeScript bindings. And this is really cool because you can now be very confident if you do a Prisma query, your database will not blow up. That's a guarantee. So we solved sort of the first interaction between the DB and the backend. This is not new. This has been going on for a while. Like you have ORMs in Golang, JavaScript, all of these different languages. What I'm more excited to talk about is this piece. And that's where you sort of send a JSON and you have this object and you try to read a property and you just find out that someone changed the API overnight and now your front end doesn't work because URL was not described on this object that you're reading. And it's the worst kind of errors, right? Like everything was working yesterday and today nothing works. Yeah, you can do conditional checks and you can do a lot of boilerplate around avoiding these errors, but there's a better way. And this is sort of inspired by GraphQL. How many of you have used GraphQL? How many of you like GraphQL? Okay, so less than the people who use. I am not a big fan of. I really like GraphQL and the way it prescribes things, but I feel it's a bit overkill in terms of day-to-day applications. If you're building like a simple app where you want to stub out like 3 API routes, GraphQL is probably overkill, right? Like you don't want to define your own schema. Your database does not probably exist in graphs. You don't want to write resolvers in your backend. It's a lot of effort. So we're going to talk about something different. We're going to talk about TRPC. So far, this is my pitch to sort of sell TRPC to you. It's completely open source. It's free to use. It's a great tool. I have enjoyed myself using it. And that's what I'm going to talk about and show you like a demo of in the next like 5-10 minutes. So that's how I feel using TRPC and using full stack type safety, because front to back, there's no type errors, nothing blows up, and everyone has a great time. So let's look at some source code, and we'll jump into VS Code. This is a standard Next project. How many of you have Next? Great. So for those of you who've not used Next, it's like a meta framework built on top of React. Think of it as React with like a backend integrated. It's really fun. It's really well made. So we have a home component, or actually let's first go and look at what this app looks like. Let's see. And let's go back. Cool. So we have a simple input. You have a create and a delete. So this wipes out the database. And if I insert, let's say, hello React, and I create, it just inserts it to my database, updates my front end, and this is like a simple CRUD, right? There's 3 fields. You have some ID, you have some text that I entered, and you have a date. So let's look at how this works. So you have your home, which is just like a layout where you get this query. How many of you used React query or Tanstack query? It's the best. It's arguably the best way to fetch data in React. And if you haven't tried it out, like I would 100% recommend giving this a shot. So TRPC binds over React query and gives you React query hooks. So there's something called a use query hook, which gives you this object, which has properties like these. Yes. Is this better? All right. So this gives you this object which has a lot of important properties or interesting properties like data, is loading, is error. So it gives you all the nice primitives you would need to sort of show a loading spinner, show an error screen, and things like that, right? So this get data has something called the data, and I can map over sort of the different fields, which I sort of showed you here. So if we have multiple objects, it'll map over them and sort of return like a list. Now, what's interesting is once I have access to this data, I get type completion on all the properties. So if I access like a property on this data, it clearly tells me what is available in my API. And I don't have to sort of coalesce or describe this type. This type comes from my backend. So let's take a look at that. This is my query. It's called get all. I'll control click on get all and I go to my backend. So this is what my backend structure looks like. We have things called procedures. Procedures are nothing but like your API endpoints. So we have something called get all, which goes to Prisma, finds all the items in my database, orders them by when they were updated, and returns them to my front end. And what's cool is essentially, if I describe my database here, this is what my SQL table looks like. That's the only place I have to describe and do write types for my data. So another way to think about this is, the problem with TypeScript is you have to write a lot of types, which people don't like doing. So once you've described your type here, Prisma creates a type called example for you, which can be inferred here directly. Since I'm finding things on the example table, it knows exactly what I will receive. And that type is inferred in the front end. So if you see here, this type example, this would be removed during compilation and would never reach my front end. But it's nice to get this type hint of telling me that, hey, data.id exists. And if I try to say data.id plus 123, it'll give me like, oh, this is a string and this is an integer. And you're doing something that you probably shouldn't be doing, right? What else? Let's see. Another cool thing is, you don't have to if you've dealt with dates before in your backend, you probably would convert it to a timestamp, send it to your front end, convert it back to a date object, and then access properties on that date. What you get here is this date object, which is properly serialized, and you don't have to worry about serializing it, passing it into a JSON, converting it back into its data type. All of that happens automatically. Let's take another look at how to mutate or how to do a mutation. It gives you things like create and remove, which you describe as mutations. And when you call this mutation, it knows what you need to pass in, right? So it'll give you type hints that it expects a text. And if you try to pass in a text as an integer, it'll give you like a type error. It'll tell you that, hey, you expect this to be a string. When you're passing this to your backend and inserting into your database, this will cause an error because your database expects a string. And you infer this type right into your front end. This is the magic of TRPC. So let's change it back to the input. The type error should go away. And let's take a look at what this looks like on the backend. So you describe a procedure called create. You describe an input. You tell it what all fields you want. So let's say we added text and we described it as a string. Now, once this validation passes, only then the mutation will be called. And you can now update your database, and you'll know that this always will be a string, as long as you're following, your compiler's suggestions and errors. Yeah, so that's pretty much it in terms of the three layers that we talked about. Let's quickly go back and see what that looks like. So going back. So your front-end client knows what your database wants through your backend, and you only have to define the types once. And it's really easy to set up. It's 10, 15 lines of code to get started. There's no resolvers like GraphQL. There's no extra boilerplate that you have to write. So let's come to how do you get started with this, right? These are some cool things. I'll leave out the slides on Twitter so you can go through, how this works in terms of, there's a very tiny client-side footprint. If you were using React Query, that's all the bundle you have to bite. Great DX. There's no code gen. So with GraphQL, each time you update your schema, you have to run the code mod to update your schema and get type hints. But here, as soon as you change your database, or here, for example, if I change, let's open this up here, and this is my favorite part to demonstrate. This is my front-end code. This is my back-end code. And here, if I rename, let's say, the input, let me find that out real quick. This input, and let's say I want to rename this to, I don't know, example. There's no code mod. My backend gets updated instantly. Isn't that magic? You change your front end, you don't have to go to your backend person and ask them to update the API. If your backend person changes a variable name, it just reflects in your front end. There's a lot of coupling, but there's so much better, clear communication between what the backend wants and what the front end receives. It's once you use it, you just can't go back to a traditional REST API. So that's my pitch essentially. There's something called Create T3 app, which gives you a CLI to scaffold a boilerplate to get started with Next. TypeScript, TRPC, Prisma, Next.js, Tailwind, all of the cool things that people are talking about. It simplifies all the boilerplate that you would have to set up yourself. Shout out to all the cool people working behind TRPC and Create T3 app, and you folks for being patient and listening to me rant for like 20 minutes straight. I'm Ekaansh. You can follow me on Twitter if you want to look at the slides or look at the code for the project. And that's been it. Thank you so much. We still have time for questions. So does anyone have like questions, feedback, suggestions? I'd be happy to sort of, yeah.
Next step, we are having both front end and back end combined, or we can have two different repositories and set up
So I think let's go back one step. Is it only for TypeScript? The answer is yes. If your backend and your front end both use the same language, that's when you can share types, right? If this was Golang, the types would look different. But is it only limited to Next? No, you could use this in any sort of monorepo where you have, let's say, Node.js and React. You could still make it work, and it wouldn't be like too difficult to set up. But it works really well with Next. That's what I would tell you. But you can use it with like Solid.js if you wanted to. Any other questions? Yeah.
Was it in terms of scaling? Because I've heard a lot of PSP it's mainly used for prototyping. Because when you start scaling, you don't show the permissions are given. Change from time to time. You have multiple people working. Use a lot of how do you go around?
I think that's an ownership problem, not a like tool problem. So what I mean by that is, if you've clearly defined boundaries between your team, you can scale with TRPC. But let's say you have a project which 100 people access and modify, you would probably want to go the GraphQL route, right? Because then there's a very strict contract, and each time that contract changes, both the teams need to be informed. Here, it's a lot more flexible. Like anyone can go back to the front end and change things. So it's true that it's better for people with like smaller teams. But you could like, ideally, if you set it up right, you could like arrange your team in a way where this still makes sense. And when you have that scale problem, you would have like, more tech to solve that scale problem. Any other questions? Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you. Sorry. Yes.
I'm going to pin it here. I don't know. Is this the right way? Okay, got it.
Sorry, I didn't see you.
It's okay. Cool. Yes. Sorry. Thank you. Okay. All right. I hope I'm audible. Yeah. Let's get started. I'm gonna talk about. Just give me a minute. All right. Yeah. So the topic is node modules, the problem, and yeah, there is a lot of problems with the node modules, and we'll see like one specific problem. Let's go one step at a time, and let me introduce myself. So I'm Santosh. I work here at Rubrik. Okay. Yeah. Now it should be right. So yeah, I work for Rubrik as a software engineer, mostly on the front end part. We use React, TypeScript, and a lot of stuff. And yeah, so basically, we have our own prime product, Rubrik Security Cloud. We'll just take a couple of minutes to introduce that. So basically, you can use RSE to secure your data wherever it lives. Like say you can secure your workloads wherever it runs, like whether it be enterprise, cloud, or SaaS, whatever it is. You can make sure that your data is protected with no tedious processes or no tedious works with backup admins or so on and so forth. So that's about it. Yeah. So let's see the major focus of this talk. So it's not going to talk much about the greedy disk usage, the size of the disk that it is using, the node modules folder or something like that. Or either I'm not going to talk about the vulnerabilities that is going to be caused by the open source ecosystem or the node packages in terms of the application security, not that also. So what I'm going to majorly focus on is about like the vulnerabilities that is caused on your dev machine or the servers wherever the node module folder is sitting, right? So basically we are using this open source thing for Node.js, and we are downloading the code in your local machines using it, and where this node module set, like we need to take care about the security there. So we are just going to focus on the vulnerabilities only on these places, right? So I just want to set the focus right and clear at this point, and let's move on. So before getting started with the talk, I just want to tell you a small story about it. Like maybe Hollywood fans will be able to connect this, but yeah, uh, let's go into that. So there is this node package called UA parser.js. Most of you might have came across or might be already using this package, or might be using the package which is transitively using this package internally. So basically, like this package is one interesting package which has a lot of stars and users in the GitHub, and say there is a lot of stats here. You can just see that. So basically, it is used to extract the browser name and few other user agent related details in a very standardized way. So that is what this UA parser.js is used for, and we use it mostly in the front end part. And you can use this same package in your backend Node.js servers also. So to get the user agent which is sending the request, so that's majorly it. So it has pretty lot of weekly downloads. If you see in npm, it is like currently 7.5 million weekly downloads, which is humongous, and 45k Harley downloads, which boil down to, and nearly 2k dependent packages in npm, if you see. And if you see, like there are 3 million GitHub repos which are using it. Again, like this stats may or may not tell the exact details of how vital this package is, but still it shows up that there is a lot of consumers for this package, and it's one of the most commonly used package in the Node.js ecosystem, right? So rather it be on the front end or back end. So yeah, let's get into it. So the owner is Faisal Salman. He's an open source contributor. So like given all these details, let's get into the story. So on October 5, 2021, so in a Russian hacking forum, there is a post that appeared, which is saying like, say, I have an NPM account, and you pay me $20K, and all set, you can get the account. So that account has a repo or a package in itself, which has like nearly 7 million downloads by then weekly. So that's the thing which was quoted, right? So on 22nd October 2021, three malicious versions of this package was published, and obviously you got it right. So basically, it was not Faisal who actually published those packages. It is someone else. The account was compromised, and now three malicious versions are published, right? So what this does, we'll see that later. But before that, right? So like what actually happens here is, like whenever you install it, right? So malware get downloaded along with this package. This malware starts executing immediately once it is downloaded. Okay. Now let's see how it happened, right? So basically we are like, it's total black box, right? I'm saying that this package got downloaded and everything got hacked or steal or something, right? So basically we'll see what this malware does and how it happened actually. So if you see, right, so basically in each of the package, right, which you are downloading, there is something called pre-install hooks in the script section or the scripts property in the package.json. You can configure that pre-install hook. So basically in there, they are executing this pre-installed JS JavaScript, if you see the code, right, it tells by itself, like say, it doesn't do anything much for the Mac OS, but it does something for Windows and Linux, right? So what it does is it does executes a, CMD script, like a bat file for a Windows machine, and for a Linux machine it is trying to execute a sh shell script, right? Now let's see what this actually does, right? So what is inside this pre-install.bat and pre-install.sh files, right? So let's see what this shell script does. So basically it downloads a, a like extension, like it's a executable. It is downloading it from unknown IP, some random IP, and then just trying to execute it. All right, so now what is happening here? So basically what is happening here is like it is trying to steal the data from all the apps that are running in your Linux machine, right? So basically we'll see like what is the problem and why it is happening only with the Node.js later, but now let's just focus on this one, right? So in Node.js I can just run a script. From Node.js I can just run a application. I can just trigger running a process from the Node.js script, right? So that is what is happening here. They are just trying to download it and then run it immediately. So let's see what happens in the batch file in the Windows machine. So it is trying to download it from the some IP and then trying to run that executable. So basically here there are two things which are happening. There is one executable which it is trying to run, and another one is like it is trying to mine the cryptocurrency also, right? So they likewise, like there can be multiple stuffs that they can do, but this is what has happened from the code snapshots which has been taken from that releases, the package releases. This is what is actually being done, right? So let's see what has happened next. What are all the reactions, right? So basically after 4 hours, right, the GitHub issue was raised and people got noticed that there is something else is happening, and this author was diligent enough to take an action immediately. That 4 hours time is like uh, pretty small when you when you think about an open source ecosystem, right? You get a vulnerability and then you get a response or a alternate solution or something like that, or a workaround within 4 hours. It's quite diligent. So the community was diligent enough to report it, and the author was diligent enough to take an counter action for it, right? So basically he published 3 other alternate versions, like say basically the 3 versions if you see which was published, right? So it was like 7.29, 8.0 and 1.0.0, right? So they he just sent out an update of each of these minor versions. So 7.30, 7.8.1 and zero point 0.1, right? So he sent out an update. He sent out a published packages, and then he deleted the packages which was already published in the npm. And then like say obviously CISA came into the picture, and then they sent out an article which is like it's a agency from US government, and they sent out a article to make sure like to ensure that people are knowing that these versions are affected by the malware, right? So that the people can either first they need to delete the existing malware which is there in their systems, which is stealing their passwords, which is mining the crypto or whatever it is, right? They need to get rid of that, delete it, get it down, delete it, and then again it's better to update the package also, right? So that is why they did it. And again, like say for example, after that 4 hours period, whomever it's trying to download that package, they should not get these packages, right? The affected packages. So that's what the thing means. So let's see what has went wrong later. But yeah, so now what we understood is there is this 4 hours period, right? And now that count which I mentioned, right, hardly downloads, that comes into the picture. There was around 45k average downloads per hour for this package, and think of like how many downloads would have happened in this 4 hours. And that's what has happened. Like already there is a lot of people's mission which was already compromised, right? So this is the end of story. Now let's see what what we could have done better. But before that, we'll take a look at the stats, right? So basically, like around 1300 packages are removed from the npm in just 2021 a year, right? So basically, these are just the packages which are removed because it is secure. Like it's not secured, it's vulnerable, right? So like basically, you see the split up here. If you are like trying to get the data like trying to track the data. Say for example, you may think that what are they going to do with the data? But say for example, right? If you think in the perspective of enterprise or any government institutions which are using the Node.js, right? So if there is an environment variable which can tell their email ID or XYZ authentication factor, they are breached, right? So that should not happen. Say for example, if there is anything in the environment variable, it's easy in the Node.js to get it right. Process.env, you just randomly give all the variables which are possible, and then you get the data out of it. So basically, what most of the scripts in these packages which got removed, right? So what they were doing is they were trying to steal the environment variables. They were trying to steal the cookies from the browsers that are in the mission, the local mission, and a lot of other stuff. And you can see that credential leakages, and they are trying to steal the environment variable, and the split up is there. And you can get a, like say, better idea about these stats and all these things from this paper which is from the Cornell University. So on an average, malicious package is available for 209 days. This is an interesting fact, right? Say the package or the story that we saw before, right? It was like the action was taken within 4 hours, and we saw like for a popular package like that, the 4 hours period is much more bigger, and it is the surface of the attack is a lot bigger with the kind of consumers, with the number of consumers, right? But if you take these packages which are there, like say other packages which are not popularly used or other than that, so they are there in the npm registry for 209 days, and we are highly vulnerable. Maybe we may use it unknowingly, right? So what actually happens there, right? So in the open source, let's take a closer look, and then we'll try to find out what went wrong in that story. So like we download some code, right? We are not reading it most of the times, and it comes from somewhere, like it's coming from npm registry, and we do not know who was uploading and from where it is coming, and written by someone else, and we execute it with all the permissions, with all the permissions in the machine, right? So that's what Node.js does. It doesn't restrict any permissions or something. It just runs it with all the permissions, and you are done. So we are running it in our machines, servers, and in number of places, right? So basically, where we have all our secrets or sensitive data. So this is what happens. So now let's see why it is not happening with the other languages or other platforms, right? Why is it happening only with the Node.js? Is it a Node.js problem, or is it a problem with all the open source? Like say Golang is having, Deno is having, whatever, right? Whatnot. So everything is having. Now let's see whether it is an open source problem or it's a Node.js problem. It's like a conjunction of both, right? To be frank, it's not like a Node.js specific problem. It's not a problem that is specific to open source, right? So if you compare the Deno, which is one of the counterparts for Node, like Ryan, who built the Node, he only built the Deno now. And one of the 10 things he regret about Node.js is like it's not secured. So why he is telling it's not secured is like you can just directly go and get all the environment variables. You can just try to make changes to your file system, write a file, delete a file, read a file, do XYZ, whatever you want, right? But in case of Deno, which is one of the counterparts, if you see, you need to execute the script with the corresponding flags. You need to enable the permissions, like say whether the script which I'm running will be able to get the environment variables. For a pre-install script that we are running in Node.js, we do not actually require the environment variables. I don't see any reason, right? So you can just use this flags to prohibit, restrict, or do something, but there is no options like that in Node.js, right? So that's why he call it insecure, and that's what the problem is, right? So it's not a Node.js specific problem. It's not an open source problem. So basically, if we are running if we are running the Node.js scripts that are developed by us or internal to the company or institution, then we are out of any trouble, right? So like say we are not going to run anything which is malicious or something, so we don't have any problem. So when the problem is like when you download a code from the open source ecosystem and then running it without reading the code, that's where the actual problem happens, right? So it's a conjunction of both the open source ecosystem along with the Node.js security problems. So it's a conjunction of both. That is where we see these vulnerabilities with the Node modules. So basically, let's just think about, right? So basically, will we be able to live without this node modules or node packages that we have? Like apparently not. So basically, like say 90% of the code that we write in Node.js, like we trust on a lot of packages, and 90% of the code, when you try to compile it, right, 90% of the code is coming from the open source packages rather than your application code in most of the applications or servers, right? So we are like more liberally adding dependencies when you compare to any other platforms like maybe .NET or Java or whatever it is. We are more liberally adding dependencies, the open source dependencies, and like when you are adding a dependency, it doesn't mean that you are just adding a dependency for that one particular package, right? It is like you are adding a lot of transitive dependencies also, like say, which like say on an average. So this is an interesting stat again. Like say when you install a npm package, like you implicitly trust on 79 packages and like nearly 40 maintainers. So that is like we don't care much about like what dependency we are using, right? That's where the problem starts. So like when you think about this, right, one is like we are more vulnerable to the uh, uh, like say what if the open source maintainer is not there or something like that. But in the security aspect, the surface of the attack is much more bigger. It's not just your application code which can be vulnerable. It is the 90% of the code you are pulling from the open source that can also be vulnerable, and that can backfire you. So let's see what we can do to be safe, right? So basically, we need to be more thoughtful, more judicious before adding a dependency to reduce the surface, like attack surface, right? So before adding anything, like even when you're building a React app, don't add any package or any dependency immediately when you want. So just check whether the package solves your purpose first. Go to the README, check it out, and then check whether it has enough GitHub stars. It has been there for a quite while time, and then there is enough activity in the community, that the community is larger enough to support your purposes, and the security aspects which are mentioned in this one also, right? So beware of the typo squatting. This is one of the popular attacks that are happening, right? So basically what may happen is like say noblocks.js.proxy. This is one of the famous libraries that we may use, you might have came across. But yeah, like there was another one package called noblocks.js proxy. So this was published, and it is a vulnerable package, and there are like say high risk that we may uh, like install this vulnerable package instead of the actual package, right? So please make sure you are typing the right like wordings, or the you are typing the right package name while you are installing the package to your node app or server, whatever it is. And the next one is like say make sure like say you are setting up the right registry to your internal packages, right? Say for example, let's say the company name is ABC, and you have a package XYZ. So most probably we will have name something like at the rate ABC/XYZ, right? So you need to make sure, like say if you are serving it from the private npm registry, you need to make sure that you are setting it up in the package level, or in the project level. You need to set the registry. There are problems when you set it in a global level. Say for example, if you set it in your mission, right, it like on a global level, it will be set, the registry will be set only for your mission, and it is not say for example a new developer getting onboarded and he's trying to install all the dependencies, right? And think of a scenario where this at the rate ABC/XYZ, a vulnerable package with the same name is published in npm. Okay, so now this new developer who is getting onboarded, he doesn't have this registry mentioned in his mission, right? In a global npm configuration, right? So what happens is he is prone to vulnerability. He will download this vulnerable package, and then that's it. He messes up. So the problem here is not him not adding the registry right. It's about the developer who added the dependency and didn't make sure that he added the proper registry, internal registry that needs to be placed in the package.json. So please make sure that, like say, when you are adding an internal dependency, make sure that you are setting the right registry to it. And about like when you need to update, right? So basically, like when we talk about that story which we saw, right? So it's not about the people who actually just installed those packages. It's also about the people who updated to the latest versions, right? Like they didn't see that it is just hours before the latest version has been published. They just went and then updated it. This could be a more vulnerable problem, right? Say basically what happens is, like say, uh, we need to wait most of the times. So let the package be released. Let someone make some POC, or maybe you can try out some POCs. Wait for some time. If there is any known vulnerability or something like that, wait for it. And then don't wait for too long, because there is a lot of exposed vulnerabilities which will be fixed in the future versions and not in the current version, right? So you need to update your packages at the right cadence, like maybe wait for like 3-4 weeks, or maybe few months, and then update your packages which you are using. And let's see the shortcomings, like which with the tools that we are using for this purpose, right? So we are currently using few tools, right? Say basically we are using Dependabot or Snake to identify the vulnerabilities in your React app or any other Node.js apps, right? So what's the problem with these applications or tools is, like they have a list of packages which are vulnerable, or the list of versions of that package which are vulnerable, right? And these are mostly publicly listed vulnerabilities, and they have the list of them. And then they make sure that these packages or versions are not installed in your app, right? The problem is, like which we saw before, right? There was one stat mentioning that the packages are mostly like there in the npm registry for 209 days before it is being reported vulnerable. So the problem is there. So like most of the times when it is being caught by this Dependabot or Snake, it's already too late. So what we need to do is, like we need to have a closer look. We cannot depend on these tools currently, and there is one tool like socket.dev which we can just explore a bit, which can give a better idea. See, basically it doesn't just go through your application code to find out the vulnerabilities. It also go through your packages which you are using, check if there is any vulnerable code, obfuscated code or something like that. You can integrate it with your GitHub apps, or you integrate it as a GitHub app, or you can add it to your build pipelines as well. Just try to explore it. But yeah, the most important thing that we need to do, or we must not skip it, is the manual audit of the package. So go through the package, like whenever you are working in an enterprise grade application, definitely you need to like just go through the packages or dependencies which you are adding newly. Go through the code, try to find out if there is any fishy code or something like that. Make sure that it is clean enough to use it in your project, right? So doing it, say for example, if you have a project already, and like say you are just trying to add a like trying to do an audit for all the packages at once, that is going to be a trouble. That is going to take a lot of time. Instead, what you can just do is you just need to do a audit whenever you are adding a package as a dependency to your project. So that you need to make sure. And let's see like what are the major things that you need to focus on a manual security audit of a package, right? So basically you go through the code like literally line by line, and this should happen before installing and then using it, right? So make sure like you go through the install scripts most of the times, basically the pre-install hooks or the install hooks, uh, like more thoroughly, because that is where most of the vulnerabilities are present. That is where you actually most of the times the attackers try to download the malwares and then try to execute it. So just make sure that that is not happening. And like say there is a example here. So if you find any obfuscated code, like as shown in this slide, right? So better stay away from that. There can be a lot of vulnerabilities with this. Basically you I don't know, like say like maybe if it is a trusted third party, okay, to have a obfuscated code, but not a open source ecosystem, right? So if you are downloading a code from the open source ecosystem, make sure that it's not having any obfuscated code like that. So yeah, that's majorly it. And like say, if you want to say, for example, like say we are working on a POC, or if you are going for a hackathon, or if you are working for an interview task or something like that, it's hard to do these audits to make sure your missions are not compromised, right? So in that case, what you can just use is like you can just try to containerize your applications even for your development, so that you have a abstracted layer which encapsulates the unwanted information being exposed, right? Like say basically it will allow only the scripts to execute only within it, the controlled environment, and not on your exact bare metal. So that is what it does. And say basically, when even if there is a malware that is being downloaded and running, and when you bring down the container image, it obviously is cleaned up and shut it down. So yeah, that's it. That's the major point like that I wanted to make. So basically I wanted to make sure that people who are using this open source ecosystem are out of this trouble of getting into these vulnerabilities. So just keep an eye on it. So basically I just want to quote a statement from Linus Torvalds. So basically he just tells this, right? So given more eyeballs, you can find any of the bugs. So try to just give more eyeballs to all the security related issues. Just make sure that we are out of harm, right? Thanks a lot. Mask up, stay safe. And basically, I want to thank my team also, my manager especially, Vinay, Priyatam. So basically, like they gave me the opportunity to host the event, and like say now with the support of Girish, Vimesh, and Kavin, like this event is happening. Thank you so much. Any questions? Yeah. Yeah.
How can you fix the issue of older OSP security scan, like 1 to 10 security they provide? Then how can you fix those issues and implement this?
Can you repeat it?
Like if you see the security like OWASP open source,
Mhm.
they provide like different types of security link, 1 to 10, what is happening. Then those security, how you fix in your applications.
You mean the security risks, or like I didn't get that part?
If you see that open web security,
Mhm.
they provide that like SQL injection similar to that dynamic injection, different type of security is provided.
Yeah.
And generally they break the application.
Mhm.
Then how in your application you fix that security
Right.
and what tools you use?
Yeah. So basically, right. So as I mentioned at the start of this talk, this talk is focused more on the security aspect of the uh, on the developer mission. Most it's focused on that, right? It's not focused more on the application security or web security for that cause. But to answer that reason, there is a lot of tools out there. Like say you can use this stick or even Sonar Cube, which goes through each of the line of the code that you are writing, and then make sure that you are not vulnerable to any of these things, right? So you can use these tools which are out there, get it sorted. Any other questions? Yep. Thank you. Who's sorry?
Can you share your screen, Anju? No, you there and this mic.
Yeah, sure.
I'll help.
Yeah, sure.
You can press this like this.
Hey everyone. Hey everyone. Am I audible? Yeah. So somebody asks you to create a new React app. What do? He would advise you to use npx create React app. The knowledge required would be HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and of course React. And you jump in, and that's when you realize that that's not the only knowledge that you require. You require TypeScript, Prettier, linting, Babel, Webpack, and many more. And that's when you realize you are stuck. Stuck being the okay. Hey everyone, I'm Vanshu Hassija. I work as senior software engineer at Visa. Here's my Twitter handle. So today I'm going to talk about next generation front-end tooling in JavaScript. But the first question that comes up is, why do we need tooling in JavaScript? So as you may all know that JavaScript lacks compilation and does not have the static typing. So for a very long time, JavaScript didn't even have the ESM support. So that calls for some bridging of the gap. To bridge that gap, various tools are used, like TypeScript is used for static typing. Babel is used for to make sure that your code works across all your browsers, and you use testing tools. And finally, to bundle all them up, you use bundlers like Webpack, Rollup, and many more. These all are fine, but these all comes up with some problems. The first one being the slow server start. If you have ever started a React server, if you have created a new app, you may have seen that it takes a couple of minutes or maybe a minute to boot up your server for the first time. So it's not a very good experience because when you start your application, the sooner the better it is. And as your application grows in size, you may observe the hot module reload does not work really well. It cannot be relied upon because the source maps that are generated become really very slow. The process takes time. And not to mention the tons of config that you need to maintain in order to create the modern world applications. It requires a lot of configurations for different tools that needs to be maintained so that you can create the application that you desire to. So ESM brought a revolution in the world of JavaScript, but the other thing that is stitching up JavaScript, that is maintaining the hype for JavaScript, is the tooling that is not in JavaScript. So the one of them is ESBuild. ESBuild is a bundler which is written in Go language. It is not written in JS. It is written in Go language, and as experimented, it is way faster than the tools written in JavaScript like Webpack and Rollup. It's way faster than that. So you may ask, why is it so? It is the ESBuild is faster because it is completely written in Go, and Go language heavily relies on parallelism. And ESBuild also uses a parallelism as a concept, and ESBuild claims to be memory efficient. So these all factors claim that ESBuild is faster than other modules or other bundlers. And if you want to read on their docs, you may read in detail why is it so fast. But moving forward, what happened was many people, many devs started approaching in this direction of ESBuild, where they wanted to minimize the tooling that we use. So the very first step that was taken was WebDev Server. WebDev Server intends to reduce the tooling that you use in your applications. It gained a lot of popularity, but as a next iteration came Snowpack, which has similar intentions, and it worked really well. But the tool that is gaining a lot of popularity these days is Vite.js. Vite, it claims to be the next generation of front-end tooling and has a lot of optimizations that it does in order to make a better developer experience. The motive of Vite is somewhat different from others. The Vite aims to minimize the feedback loop. Means it wants to create a very good developer experience without compromising the user experience. So I can keep on talking and talking, but I would like to demonstrate how is it faster. So let's create a new Vite app. Yeah, it will ask you the project name. So Vite is framework agnostic, but it means that it does not rely upon some particular framework to work upon. It has support for many frameworks, but for the demo purpose, I'm going to stick with vanilla. I'm going to work with JavaScript. And let's see how much time does it take to run the server. The first step that I need to do is npm install. I'm scared now. It will take a lot of time. But no, it doesn't. If you see, it only added 15 packages, which proves Vite is very lean as a code. I mean, it's very lean. It requires minimum packages to start the dev server. And I can make sure I didn't have the Vite cache here. So it's really very fast. Let's start with the server. Yeah, sure. Fine. Yeah. If you see, it was pretty much instant. It didn't take much time. Would it have been React? You would have to wait for like a minute or two. So the first server start is really very fast. But how is it so? What is Vite doing to achieve the same? So what Vite does is, so Vite categorizes application as dependencies or source code. Dependencies are those code which are written in plain JavaScript and do not change much. So what Vite does with dependencies is it pre-bundles your dependencies as if it were in production and it can serve over the network. Then comes the source code which needs to be transformed, which needs some kind of processing that is served as a ESM module. Means it is not transformed, it is directly served as ESM module to the browser. So what Vite does here is, we write our code in the form in ES modules. Those ES modules are given to the browser. Browser goes through those files and looks what all imports does it need. And whatever imports are needed, it makes a network request for each import, and that's how it's done. It is the point here is the way we are giving it to the browser. We are giving it as plain ESM modules, and rest of the heavy lifting is done by the browser itself. So the hot module reloading that I mentioned, that it cannot be relied upon if the application becomes larger. At Visa, we have tried this Vite.js application where we have a very large application, and I can make you sure it works really well. It works seamlessly. It doesn't matter how much the project goes longer, means whatever is the size of the project, it works really great. And as I mentioned the pre-bundling in my previous slide, how does pre-bundling work is, so let's take an example again. So let's say so let's say I have this application. In this application, I have a counter.js file where I'm interested to install a package, let's say low-es. From this low-es, let's try to import the debounce function or any function that you might be interested in. And let's simply print the debounce. Let's try to see the network request, what it makes and what it all does. If you go to the network requests, you see this low-es, if you have used it, low-es is means a group of small modules. So what Vite is doing here is, it is compiling it, it is bundling all those small modules in a single file and serving it over the network. How does this help is, it makes the loading fast, what it would have been if it was served as a plain ESM module. So the motive here is not to use ESM module everywhere, but the places where it gives us optimizations. So here we have not used the ESM concept, because if the pre-bundling happens and it loads faster, we need to just avoid that concept. So this is how the pre-bundling works in Vite.js, and it gives a major advantage over the other bundlers. Another thing that I would like to mention about Vite is switching between JavaScript and TypeScript. It's seamless. So let's say if you go to your index.html here, it has a main.js file which it relies upon. If I change this file to .ts, the only thing that I need to do is I need to change the extension here as well, and Vite takes care of the rest of the things. Yeah, and it works seamlessly. Means switching between TypeScript and JavaScript is very seamless. So Vite.js is doing a lot of work for us to make the experience better. Not only this, but Vite is a complete bundler. When you use React for your creating your libraries as well. So Vite is a complete bundler in the sense that it allows the support for libraries as well. You can create libraries in Vite, and you can create the libraries with multiple extensions, CJS, ECM, ESM, whatever you are interested in. So Vite.js in that manner is a complete bundler. It provides you all the things that you are having in React. All the things may be quite ambitious, but many things. And the one of the favorite feature of the community, and personally mine, is also asset handling, how it handles assets. Let me show you an example. So this is one more project where I have some images in my bundle. Yeah. So if you see, I have some images in my images folder, and I have used it in different files. Some images I have used in my JavaScript file, and some images I have used in my CSS file as backgrounds. So when I just create a bundle out of it, you may see that sometimes if you see the CSS file, it creates those images inline. If you go to JS, it handles in a different way. So Vite.js is doing all the heavy lifting again here. So it provides you with a mechanism of auto optimizing those assets. So those assets are optimized for you. You need not to take care about it, and it gives you the time to focus on your business logic. And one of the other great feature is the universal plugin support. You may have used, you may be using rollups, and you may have wrote plugins in rollup, or maybe yes, let's stick to rollup as of now. So what the developers of Vite.js and rollup have done is they have collaborated in such a way the plugins that you write in rollup.js are also applicable for Vite.js. You can use the exact same plugin in Vite.js without writing even single line of code again. So these all features, these means Vite.js now claims to be the next generation of JavaScript tooling, and it proves to be, because it changes the way how you code today. So the first generation was before Node.js, and the second generation came after the Node.js, and finally we are entering the third generation where bundlers are no more needed. You can focus on your business logic, and you can develop faster without taking much care. So that's it from my side for today's talk. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
So like when you input the loaders, right? There was so we create a separate bundle for each dependency.
No, it creates every dependency is bundled in a single file to load faster.
So we see that there is one call one and loaders.
Yeah.
So suppose we have many dependencies like loaders and other like so how many bundles will be created?
One bundle will be created for whatever dependencies. As it said, the dependencies and source code will be different, and dependencies will be bundled in a single file.
So
as it,
for example, one dependency I use a React, another is both will be notified in one bundle.
Yes, because as if it were in production. Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you, everyone.
We'll take a short break, a 20-minute break. Feel free to grab some coffee and snacks. And we'll be back in 20 minutes. We'll have one last stop.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank
So,
you.
Is there any initial first page load performance issue because of this bundling?
No. So means it optimizes in such a way only, means they have taken care of this by themselves only. The heavy lifting that they have done.
Okay, so because of heavy bundling, like it won't impact the first page load, like
Yeah.
performance.
Yes, means the one concern that we may have is for the SSR. If you see the Vite 4, the latest version, SSR is very well supported. So it's
How
all
good is adoption of it?
Vite is really, means okay. So I had a project which was a vanilla project. The only thing that I need to do is install Vite, and it's done. It doesn't have the much configuration and all the problems that I talked in the very first time. It doesn't have that. It's really cool to work with.
What I got is what I think adoption as in like product adoption in the ecosystem, like different companies adoption.
Yeah, it is really good. Means many companies and even some products that I can name, but they have already started. Means they're building libraries on top of Vite only. The adoption is really very good, and a very good community is getting built around it. Yeah. Hey, Vanshu.
Hassija, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So actually, the thing is, like I've been building on the Webpack. So can you tell me, like, if I want to transition from Webpack to Wheat, so how could be? Like actually, I'm building a product called Fuller, and we have around 8,000 active members. So despite being like changing a lot of things, so is it possible to transit from Wheat to Webpack to Wheat? Like
Depends on how many. Means do you have many plugins written in Webpack or that your custom
not
plugin?
much.
So I think that's fine. Means if you're open to writing those in Rollup again or Vite.js again, those plugins, if those are very less, then it's fine. Means the transition won't take much time there.
Yeah, I had tried a bit of actually my backend is Laravel and has already then Vite support in the newest version of it.
Okay.
But actually I'm been coming from the 7th version of Laravel. Now it's 9. So there was a Webpack earlier in the version. Now I have upgraded to it and there was in the newest version it is there. So like is there any other dependency on the server? Like do I have to change also on the server? Like
No, nothing like that. Means
nothing like that.
nothing like that. Means the support as if you were doing it in React for earlier is the thing that you will doing. Just the template of Vite is added. That's it. Means for the heavy lifting. That's it. Yeah. No more changes. Means that I have done. Means I have also shifted from Webpack to my
Actually, yes.
for performance
It's getting
issues.
it's getting
Yeah.
yes very slow and while that well.
Even the final, let's say when we build it, right, when we build it, is it, create React app and create the same way, or it is it?
Yeah. Means the production in production they are building it roll up only. Means they are using roll up in production because that means it cannot be done in production the way we are handling it in so production remains the same. It's just that the development feedback loop is
Only then what says that it will be bundled and then it will be faster in response of creating those apps
Yes.
or adding those.
yeah.
The development will be faster.
Development will be faster is if you can. Yeah, definitely.
Yes, actually it was a nice session.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it was nice. And so first one question. So the doubt, right? That I asked. So is it due to that it's a demo session? That's why so it was showing the load as.
Because it has only one dependency that I was having. Means if it would have been, it would have created a hash and pre-bundled in a file and all that stuff would have been done. Means in like it happens in production. Production में भी क्या होता है कि all the node modules means whatever your dependencies are, those are bundled in one single file and served over the network, right? So this is how it happens in the development as well in Vite.js. So it's the same.
We can rename any other.
Yes.
As, like our dependency.js and other is source.js.
Yes. You can just means you can do it.
Dependencies loaded for that also.
Yeah, pre-bundle that helps really. Means it does not to pre-bundle on every hot model reload and that stuff is really great.
Yeah, I'm Akash and I work as a full stack developer. Basically. So currently I'm working on the refactoring where we are moving the code from background to React. I have been facing an issue where let's say when there comes code splitting in the picture in the app, right? So even if we go with the pre-bundles of particular routes, what happens here, for example, let's take Lodash. If it's being used in certain components, each bundle will have some part of Lodash be like compiled, bundled, and served.
Yeah.
But as you're shown in the white user section, when we are doing bundle with white, it actually serves as a network in a single bundle itself and the app roles.
Yes.
So may I know what happens when we combine white with the code bundling, sorry, code splitting of React? How does it work?
I have not really experimented with it, but if you see code splitting here, it is by default the code splitting happens in Vite only because it is served as a ESM modules, the components, whatever it is. It is already means I don't think so. It would be a problem means if you are asking that question because if you means when I tried React components are just served as ESM modules only. Only those will be loaded when needed. Means it will make the network request then. So this is how code splitting works as well. So I think those things are already Vite has figured it out. So that will not be a problem. Means if you want to ask, means if was that your question, means would there be problem or something? But this is handled in Vite by itself. They have thought of the
Currently,
code splitting.
when we are configuring, we need to add certain configs in the website itself to identify whenever we are serving like a third-party dependency like movement.js or be it below dash, we will compile it all together like in a separate bundle and will serve with the app load.
Yes.
When the first app loads, and then it will be consumed by the bundles which are served as a part of a code
Yes.
splitting routes.
Yeah.
We do the code splitting part, right? So, I mean, earlier it was in the same bundle before this suspension, right? Now when the chunk happens, like
Already
it will be
chunks are
divided,
coming.
and when you need it, it will be fetched out, and it will be cached. So that third party part, right? Like what you're talking about those bundles, that will be in one of the files. It will not be attached to each file, each component. It will be in one separate system that will be preloaded first, and then all your pages will come in whenever it is required. So when you say that some of the third party component is assigned to some page, that will be preloaded before it. Then your page is comes, so that's why
Recently, when I did we used Webpack Analyzer to see what all bundles have. So it was having like certain parts of Lodash was being rebuilt together and being served in a second. But it was like a same code being served in different
Yeah.
bundles, which is not necessary exactly. So we have to like define explicitly and like have the bundle pre-built
Yes.
production bit and then solve it.
Yeah.
I mean, earlier, like when the single bundle was there, your third party dependency and all your component was in a single file, right? Only one part what changed was those component was segregated as segregated. Whereas the remaining part of third party still loads. That was only different ones. And with Beat, I think only the template change would be there.
Yes.
Apart from that, any production would
It's just
still
that
be
it's getting plugged in.
plugged in.
Yeah.
Even I'm thinking currently I use CRA.
Okay.
So I'm even thinking, I have seen a lot of talks where they're talking about Beat and all those things. Only like for development time would be improved, but I still feel that when this suspense and all this came into picture, even CRA, the final production build is
The
really
final
fast.
production build is the same because
Same.
it's using Webpack, it's using Rollup.
And one big plus was that Webpack, although there's like reviewed a lot of projects, that has gone away.
Yes.
Because for me, like I've never used it because for the past 3 years I started using this Pokemon face. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Webpack and all this, and you just focus on your development and then.
Yeah. Means Vite is definitely better than what I have used. So yeah.
Okay, it was a great talk. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Hey.
Yeah, I'm from Flipkart. He's my friend. So actually, like I'm in the supply chain and we build UIs for that. So we are using Webpack currently, and like I'm giving the task to optimize the Webpack and shift to Webpack 5 and customize it. So like hearing this talk, so I was thinking to like maybe we can migrate on White as well. So currently like we are running around 30 to 35 apps and we take around so it's taking a lot of time to build all the apps right in the
Yeah,
flow.
exactly.
So it takes around 35-40 minutes. So we want to optimize that. So what will you recommend? So should I spend more time studying about Webpack and doing all the customization or directly shift to White and see how it works?
Depends on how many plugins, how many custom plugins do you have in Webpack? Many?
Yeah, we have around like 7 to 8, around 10 plugins, I guess we have.
So it depends on the effort. Like those plugins you have to definitely write in the ES build plugins again. Means those plugins need that need right. Other than that, it will be the smooth transition. Means only the plugin thing is that you need to figure out if you would be able to do it in the ES build. Not if ES build then roll up. If you can convert those plugins into those bundlers, then you can shift to Git for sure. means that will not be a problem. It's the same thing I did in my company. I was using Webpack and I had customization of 15 plugins. Yeah, so now those 15 plugins I converted to ESBuild, and then the transition was really very smooth. Means those plugins are just served with the means, you know.
What do you mean by converting to ESP? Did you write a wrapper?
Yes, no. Convert the mapping means if you have if something you are using in Webpack that is not there in ESBuild, you need to write the custom one for ESBuild or rollup. And as I mentioned, we can have the plugins for ESBuild also, the rollup also. It works for both of them. So whatever plugins that you have for Webpack and you feel that that functionality is not there in ESBuild, you need to write a plugin again in that.
That plugin again.
Yeah, that's the effort that you need to take.
What's the community around, like in White itself? Like in Webpack, we use Tappable for making up custom plugins. So what is the community around? Like is community that mature that we can like move our custom plugins, write our custom plugins in the White?
Not really. Means it is developing for sure. Means like it was in the initial days of React. It's in that stage. Means it is not really very built. Means again I'll say React has a better community, Webpack has a better community than this one for sure.
With the like architecture, Webpack uses the Tappable thing, right?
Yeah.
Tappable architecture. So is it similar in White also, or are they using some other architecture for writing plugins?
For writing
I mean, the easyability and from
yeah.
those perspectives.
So means the ESBuild plugins are easier to write. Means what I'll say. Means I shifted from Webpack to ESBuild plugins. They were easier to write, and but there's a learning curve. Means you may need to learn Go if you're writing in ESBuild. But if you're using it in means like if you're using Rollup, then you may write in JavaScript and use those plugins in again Git. So that's means it is easy to write compared in Rollup and ESBuild. It's fine, but Webpack is difficult, more difficult.
Do you know like how much time I can save in bundling if I shift to White? And we have like around 30 apps.
So according to percentage, I can tell I saved my 22% of the means by 22% I reduced my time of the core servers. So core server is the first of all, and then hot module replacement is the magnitude times faster than what I had in Webpack and all this stuff. So core server start is the first thing, and that is the very first boot up. That I have the time is decreased by 22%, and that was a real game changer for me. Bundling time, I think that has not much been affected because it is again using the roll up and the bundling remains the same. The bundling process is not much even affected. Means I'll say like 2 to 3% maybe, and then I'm sure. So bundling is not much affected. Yeah. Nice. Thank you.
Continue the question. Actually, I wanted to ask the migration process. You see, if you're already using Create React now, have you worked on any migration?
Yeah.
So how long did the process take, or is it worth like migrating? Because if it's too hectic, then you have to have a separate team for it.
So depends on what are how many plugins do you have in current app. So the migration that takes time is Webpack to ESBuild or Rollup. So if you have many custom plugins in Webpack and you are trying to just convert it to ES, that is a time-taking process. Other than that, there is no effort.
And I wanted to ask, how is the lazy loading compared to like other Snowpack and anything in White?
It's really fast and it's better and handled by itself. You do not have to take care
You
of.
don't have to worry about any of those lazy loading.
Thanks.
So actually, I have a Create React app. I'm actually migrating to Next. I'm trying to look on that way. I saw White also supports server-side generation systems.
Yes.
Right. So, but I'm trying to understand like, is it just the build time that it saves along with the assets, or is it something apart from it? Let's say when it runs along the runtime as well, the service side of the pages. Does it become much faster? Because mine is, for example, hosted on Cloudflare pages. Okay. I saw that even White also supports that. How is the migration from that? Any idea of you?
Yeah. So the changes that are done right now is like in development, it serves as ESM modules directly.
Okay.
So, but what would React do? It will bundle up and then show up in the browser. That will take a lot of time, right? So ESM modules, it's just like the code splitting happens automatically now because you are just serving as an ESM module and you just do it. Means the thing that you have to take care in React, it's automatic. This is a selling point. Means how the ESM is handled.
So when you say the code splitting is done automatically on this, like generally what CRA says is like we have to manage by creating it as separate bundling patterns,
Yes.
right? So that it doesn't become heavy on the loading time.
Yes.
Right. But
However, when you say it's code splitting is based on the ESM module,
Yeah.
so does that mean that the number of imports that I have used on a page, based on that, it will automatically
Yes.
perform the code splitting?
Exactly. Means let's say you have a component a.js and b.js. You're first loading the a.js. It will make a request. So that a.js is served as it is as an ESM module. And in that a.js, whatever imports you have, those main network requests will be made. And then you go to b.js. Then that's when the b.js is downloaded in your, that the network.
So this is how, like, when you say this is for the normal CRA to
Yes.
right? And okay, I mean, ideally it will be reducing the entire load time because so what happens to how we have the main.chunk.js and all of those files, right?
Yeah.
Which basically becomes pretty heavy. So now you're saying even that file gets reduced and only the imports part of it would also be downloaded separately.
Build is what you are referring to. Build doesn't has not many changes because the build process remains the same. There we use Webpack, here we are using Rollup. Rollup is used in production builds. So the build process is necessarily the same and it works like it works in React.
Okay, so from the development standpoint, I don't have much changes into it if I look at
Yes,
it, right?
exactly.
It's the same application remains as it is. Code wise, I'm doing the same things. And assets, since my assets are not there, assets are anyways coming up from third party.
Yeah.
So I don't have much changes if I look at, right?
The only thing that you need to take care is the Webpack migration. If you have custom plugins in Webpack, you need to write it in Rollup ES build.
So when you say custom plugin, what do you mean by that? Like
Means like let's say custom configuration for Webpack. You may
Okay,
have or
okay.
you may not have. If you are having those custom plugins in Webpack, custom configuration for Webpack, you need to see how it maps to Rollup or ES build.
Okay. So that's the catch up area, basically.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Hey.
I just wanted to say hello.
Hey.
I like it.
Yeah. Vanshu. Yeah. Thank you so much.
How's the work at Visa?
It's really good. Means I enjoy it. It's exciting. So experimental it is. So.
Nice. So you've always been in front end?
Yeah, front end from very starting.
I'm also front end. I work at a company called Maya Labs.
Oh, okay. I have heard.
We're an intern as well.
Okay, nice.
I'm just starting off.
Yeah, great to connect. Means keep attending.
It's good. That's how
Eugene.
Hey, hi.
Hey.
I love the talk actually.
Thank you. Thank you.
It was amazing. And ऐसा था कि Next.js से हम we can start using it.
Oh, thank you so much.
And most people don't care about such things. You're few of those who are actually care about such things. Yeah, most people don't care about such things.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you for taking the initiative. Yeah. I think you're very much inspired by Linux and open source system based. Yeah, I can see it in your talk.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Pretty good.
Thank you.
I will definitely follow what you will do and possibly.
Yeah, sure, sure. Thank you.
I will definitely.
Where to keep this? ये कहाँ रखना है? Where to keep this? ये कहाँ रखना है? Okay. Oh, so sorry. I have been wearing this whole time. Yeah, I'm just leaving now. Send me.
start. Mic? Okay. Oh, this is the mic.
This is for recording. We are streaming to YouTube. You can put some color. I'll help you.
Cool.
So,
And this one mic I'll.
hello. So we have more talks. So we get started then.
Hello, everyone. Should we just start? Hello, everyone. I'm Siddharth Rakesh, a senior software engineer working in the UI team here at Rubrik. So if you want to know more about Rubrik, we'd be happy to chat. You can reach out to us. We're all here. So after the talks, you can just, come over and we can talk about what we do here at Rubrik and what's our work like. Cool. So today I'll be presenting how to create customizable dashboards in UI applications. So as you know, right, in today's data-driven applications, users often need a way of visualizing their data. So sometimes they may need a way to visualize their metrics or their trends over time. So you will often see usages of donut charts, area charts to represent the same. We show these visualization tools in dashboards, and we'll talk about how you can easily build such dashboards. In particular, we'll be talking about a library called React Grid Layout, which is used for creating grid-based layouts in React. It allows us to create responsive, draggable designs, and it also has the functionality of changing the position and sizes of the widgets in the dashboard. Next slide. Yeah. So over here, you can see an example of how this library works. So as you can see, the user here is changing the position and the sizes of the widgets in their dashboard. Like they're dragging and resizing it using mouse interactions. Okay. So coming to more about this library. So this library has many benefits, which really helps us build such dashboards. So it has a responsive design, which means that you can have responsive layouts for different screen sizes. So while building a dashboard, you may want to have a particular layout in a smaller screen size, and you may want to have a different layout in a wider screen. So this library allows you to set your own breakpoints, set your own width breakpoints for your screen, and build your layouts accordingly. It allows you to create draggable items so that the user, based on their needs, can customize their dashboards by dragging and dropping widgets to suitable positions for them. Each user's requirements are unique, and we need to provide users the way to customize their dashboards to meet them. This library is highly customizable. It allows you to set the whatever item gap you want, the margin for your dashboard. It allows you to customize the behavior a lot, and it is easy to use. Like compared to other libraries, which we'll compare it with, like it has a very simple API and allows you to very quickly and easily build your dashboards. If we also look at some of the drawbacks of this library, it's not as active as it used to be before. Over the last year, there is somewhat lower activity over this, and it has some missing features, which we'll also talk about in more detail later, which is like it lacks the ability to drag and drop external items inside the dashboard. It doesn't provide you the ability to fix the sizes for the widgets to a certain set of sizes, etc. Yeah, as we talked about before, like some of the practical applications which this library can be used for is how to create dashboard layouts, how to create layouts for data visualization, and building interactive user interfaces, drag and drop, resizing, etc. So if we compare this library with other libraries which offer similar functionalities, like so some of the major competitors in this space are Gridster, Packery, Gridley, etc. So compared to these, as you can see, that React Grid layout is much more widely used. It is orders of magnitudes, more used than the other competitors, and uh, like some of the advantages it has over the other competitors is that it is completely React based. Like the others are heavily dependent upon jQuery, but this is like completely built in React, no jQuery, and it offers a rich set of functionality while also maintaining a simple API. Like Gridster and Packery do have a rich set of functionality, but they're also harder to use as compared to React Grid layout. And you can see that based on the trend, React Grid layout has grown popular over the years. It has been around for a long time. So, and it continues to grow popular. Okay. So let us see how we can use this library for building a dashboard, right? So let me open a few examples of basic examples of how we can leverage this library for building a dashboard. So over here, what you can see, like this is an official example for React Grid layout in their website. You can find more examples with more advanced use cases in the GitHub repository for React Grid layout. So if we take a look at this part, right, like the main thing which you need to specify while building a dashboard is a layout. So a layout you can think of is just a definition of what is the position and width and height of these items. So you can see while generating the layout, we have specified the XY, which marks the position of an item, and also the width and height, basically the dimensions of a widget item, and an ID. So if we pass an array of such configurations for each widget item, it constitutes a layout, which is then passed to React Grid layout. Sorry. Oh, okay. So let me just zoom into this a little bit more. Is this visible now? Okay. Yeah. So as I was saying, like you have to define a layout, which you can then pass to React Grid layout, and you can also pass things, such as how many columns do you want in this. So it's a grid-based system. You can define the number of columns which you want. You can pass that. You can also pass things like margin or item gap and so on. So it's highly customizable in that sense. And if we take a look at how that works like, so this is a live example of React Grid layout. So as you can see, it allows me the functionality of changing the size as well as the position of items. Like I can drag and drop things wherever they like, and you can also see how smoothly the other elements move into their new positions based on where I'm dragging items into. So it tries to avoid collisions. Like that's the default behavior. It will want to avoid collisions. So it will, when you try to move an element, it will automatically adjust the positions of other elements. So yeah, you can see that it intelligently determines new layouts based on the user interactions. Okay. Yeah. So coming back here. Right. So as I mentioned before, there are some drawbacks while using this library as well. So something which I mentioned earlier was like it does not natively allow the functionality of dragging and dropping items outside the dashboard into the dashboard. So that is a use case which some of us may need, right? You may want to add more widgets to your dashboard, right? So that is something which we have customized in our own fork of this library here at Rubrik. We added the functionality of dragging and dropping external items into the grid. We have also added the ability to resize the items to specific sizes. So sometimes free form resizing is maybe counterproductive, right? If you just resize your widget to anything, like it can break the functionality, like it may not be as functional, it may not look as good. So we have also added the ability to resize items to specific sizes only. Like define a set of sizes for the item, it will only grow to that. It can't be anything else. To keep our items visually appealing for all sizes, we have made our widgets, our items, adaptive to the new sizes. So, regardless of what new size you select for your items, it should still look good. It should adapt to the new size. That is something which we have built. I'll just demo that shortly. We have also added the ability to save widget layouts to the database. So we would want that whatever customization the user does, right? If you have specified a particular layout of the items while while customizing your dashboard, you will want to save that configuration and be able to use it again next time you visit the dashboard. So we have also added the ability to save widget layouts, reset them as well. Yeah. We have also built a widget library which allows you to pick and select which widgets you want to add to the dashboard. Okay, so now I'll move on to a demo of what customizations we have provided for the dashboard view. Okay, so this is how our usage of React Grid layout in our application. Like some of the data has been obfuscated for privacy reasons, but essentially what we have done is we have use this library for creating this customizable view. So we trigger the customization mode by clicking on this button, edit dashboard. And now the widgets here will be resizable, rearrangeable. So for example, if you consider this widget over here, I can change the height. And on changing the height, you will notice that the content of this widget adapted to its new size. Like the donut chart became bigger, the legend also changed to support the new size for this widget. So, and all our widgets are like that, like they can adapt to the new sizes and change their layout accordingly. You can also drag and drop your widgets wherever you want. You can rearrange them as per your requirements. In addition to this, we have also created a widget sidebar library, which can be used for dragging and dropping new widgets into this dashboard. So for example, if I want to pull in a widget from another dashboard inside this dashboard, I can easily do so by dragging and dropping this. And you can see that this new widget is now part of this dashboard. So this can make sense for users who may want to create their own unique views for themselves. Like, as I mentioned earlier, every user is unique. They can have their own requirements. They may want to have their own views. So this is a way in which we provide this power to the users, right? And as I mentioned, like we have also built in the save functionality. So I can save this dashboard layout. And whenever I visit this page again, right, I will still see my customized view, which can then be reset back to the original. Okay. You can also remove widgets if you'd like. Awesome. Okay, so yeah, that's all I wanted to present today. Any questions? Sorry?
Is there an ability to define data source as a data widget? Like that can be do
Yeah, so in our case, what we have done is like each widget has tries to pull in its own data. It makes its own queries from the API server. Yeah. So like we don't really care about how that widget is getting its data. In this case, this is only a pure UI presentational framework. All right. Somebody had a question? You can just use this. No, it is not. So like whatever is the content of these widgets, right? That is just internal to that widget. Like this dashboarding framework doesn't really care about what's in. Thank you so much. Yeah, this dashboarding library doesn't care about what's being rendered inside the widget. That is private to that widget's definition. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's a great question, right? How does it know? Right. So we do pass two properties to every widget. So the framework passes two properties. One is the size for that widget, which is essentially what's its height and width in terms of rows and columns. The other is what's the width of your screen, essentially what breakpoint you're on. Are you on a large screen? Are you on a small screen? Using these two, we figure out what should be the new layout for this widget. Right? Can you pass? Yeah, this library supports mobile, touch interactions, etc. It does. Can we just once? Sorry? It is scalable. It works very well for a large number, but it does not support virtualization. It is lightweight though. Hey.
We build we also build self-service for our
Mhm.
we have recently introduced so library. One thing I would like to add here is that support adding external libraries to the
Yeah.
The other thing I would love to know is how you guys are doing this adaptive widget resizing.
Yeah. So how we handle adaptiveness is that the widget needs to know, right, what size it is on. So that includes, like, it should know what's the height and width of that widget. Like that is defined by the number of rows and columns, and it should also know what is the screen width. So the same rows and columns should look different in a large screen as compared to a small screen. So those parameters we pass to the widget in the wrapper framework which we have built on top of React Grid layout. Using these two factors, using these two parameters, we basically kind of do like a switch case. Like if this is the height and width of the widget and this is the breakpoint, then you should maybe this should be the donut size of that donut chart. Yeah, so that's how we adapt these widgets. Mm-hmm.
So you are doing a read
Yeah, the widget is, yeah, it does. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Can you pass? Can you pass? Thank you. Not yet. We are planning to, but this will require a little bit more work before we can open source our fork. Yeah, that's on our. That's something we're thinking of doing about. Okay. 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 So you're talking about if where my customized layout is saved. Yeah, we save it in the database. So every user has an entry in that database, and we save it against the user's ID. Yes, yeah. So yeah, that's a great question. So how this grid layout works is that we define the number of columns in this layout, right? That can be different for different breakpoints. So large screen can have different number of columns, small screen can have different number of columns. That is flexible.
So for the smaller screen, it will be kind of percent all the if I cost 200
Mm-hmm.
so you calculate based on the percentage or the screen sizes then how do you calculate based on the percentage of the
Right. So it is like kind of like a percentage. It's not pixel based. So like 3 columns can be different. Like each column width will be different in a small and large. Yeah, it's percentage wise. Yes. Okay. Any more questions? Okay. Yeah, it's a private fork. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So, like our effort is basically, making sure it works, like having the tests. Like there haven't been a lot of active releases in this library very recently. So right now we haven't seen a lot of overhead as such. It works for us. Yeah. Yeah, no, we haven't really seen any impact in that sense. It is easy to maintain. Like as I mentioned, there haven't been any new releases in some time in this library. So like this thing works for us, our fork works. We are actually planning to see if we can, open source our own fork or try to contribute back into the library. We are looking at those options. There was some question there. Can you? Yeah, is it on? Sorry, could you just repeat your question? I couldn't hear it very well. Okay. Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, so like to add new widgets, right? Like this is completely React based. It like just does basic resizing of your widgets. It changes the height, width of the those items inside of it. Like you did mention the Canvas API. I don't think it uses the Canvas API under the hood, but it is still fast, like reasonably fast for our use cases, and it has a very easy API. Like it's like the setup time for this library is very low. You can like very easily get started. All you have to do is like create new React components, React item, React components as children of this React layout component, and it starts working. Like so that's why like we went for this option. Any other questions? Yeah, can you pass that? Oh, okay. No, is it not working? Yeah.
I might be wrong, but I saw the position of showing. So I saw that it was still using class components, React class components for the service mostly on the front side. So the reason we are not moving to functional components for this dashboard, it provides a lot of extra features.
Yeah, no, you can use, so in our own implementation, right? For example, the dashboard which I'm showing to you, we use functional components. Like that is an example on their own website, React Grid Layout's own website. They are using class components, but it works easily with functional components. Yeah, so the question was like, why are we using class components as compared to functional? But it works very well with functional. Any other questions? All right. Okay. Thank you. Oh, yeah, sorry. I just kept it there. Oh.
Screen share, anything related to screen share.
He was not able to share his screen. Like, yeah, so it's some permissions issue, I guess. Sumira. So he's facing some permissions issue. Can he share? So I did. Put this mic.
Why do I put this?
So you can press here and put some color.
Okay. Okay.
This is for recording.
Sure. All good. Hey, hi guys. Good evening. Sorry for the delay. I hope the screen is visible. Yep, cool. So yeah, myself, I'm Jayasurya. I'm working as a senior dev at a company called Assembly. So Assembly is a product-based company. Our product is about employee engagement. So by the way, in case like if any front-end folks are looking for a job, and if you're looking for a company who values culture and along with a good package, please reach me out. Okay, I think enough of the promotion, and let me talk about myself. So I'm Jayasurya, as I said, one of the senior front-end folk at Assembly. Apart from work, in my free time, I play PS4 games, and my recent obsession is, going for trekkings. I'm trying to go to trek like every 2 months once at least, and then I follow cricket. And by the way, any RCB fans out here? Bro, I'm CSK. Yeah, that's how I annoy my friends out there. By the way, yeah, cool. I think we can start now. So yeah, Qwik. So we all know like there are already so many frameworks out there. Then why there is a new guy? There is always a reason for a particular framework. Like they always, look for a problem and they try to, provide a solution, right? So what is the problem Qwik.js is trying to solve? So they are saying the problem is JavaScript. They are saying JavaScript is the problem. I know your reaction. It's like, what? Yeah, I know. Let me brief you. So what they're trying to say is like with the current server-side rendering, we ended up shifting so much of JavaScript code to the client side. And because of this is increasing the TTI. TTI is nothing but the time to take a web page become interactive for the first time user, right? So the more the web page takes the time, obviously you lose your business, as in like you lose your customers. So this is a problem. But again, the question is, why are we shifting a lot of JS to the client? Is it because of the developer? If you ask what Qwik.js author, the founder is saying is, no, it's not because of the developer. Then we are good. But why it's happening? The reason is a lot of time we wanted to make a super duper interactive web application. Obviously, we'll end up writing so much of JavaScript, right? The another scenario would be our application goes. The current application is not as same as how we used to develop a 10-year back, right? So there are so much of JavaScript codes and the applications are getting complicated. Obviously, our bundle size is also getting bigger.
So this is the reason. So this is not because of any developer or anything like that. So this is a fundamental problem. So what is the solution? Surely solution is simple. We have to try to shift less JavaScript code to the client, right? In a way, that's what Qwik.js is also trying to do. But again, the question, why we need Qwik to do this? We know the problem, we know what is the solution. So why can't we do, as in the current or the existing framework can't do it? The problem is this guy, hydration. So hydration, we know hydration involves in server-side rendering. By the way, why are we doing server-side rendering? Because we have the problem with CSR that, when you are trying to render your application, there is a blank screen appears, or say like your application needs SEO support, we can't do it with the CSR. That's why we go for the server side, right? So the idea is to go for server side is to pre-render the HTML so that the server can send the HTML immediately and you get to see the UI quite, as soon as you hit the URL, right? But again, there is this guy, hydration comes in. So hydration, excuse me. So hydration, basically what's happening here is, as soon as we get the HTML from the server, the client doesn't know, like, okay, I got the HTML, dude, but what about the event listener? What about the state? It doesn't know anything of it, right? Because what we got from the server is just a HTML. So it's downloading all the JavaScript that is required for a particular page, and then it's just parsing those JavaScript and executing those code. And after that, we have to, remap the state and bind the listeners. All this process are happening in the hydration. So basically, why? Because of this hydration, like if you ask again, like why we need hydration is because the client doesn't know what it has to do, like where it has to add the event listeners and everything, right? So because of this, we ended up executing our application twice. One is in the server side, and the second time is it's on the client side, right? And the another problem, the downloading of JavaScript, right? That the size of the downloadable JavaScript, depending on it's proportional to the app size. That is very scary because you cannot really take control over your application, right? Like obviously we are trying to solve more problems, and obviously we end up writing more JavaScript. So this is the problem with hydration. So if this is the problem, then how Qwik is trying to solve this? So they're bringing two new approach. One is resumable or resumability. Another one is progressive or progressiveness. So what is resumability? Before we see what is resumability, if you ask like, why does the client do a hydration? Because it lacks the information that the browser needs in order to make the application interactive, right? So this is the problem. This is why we do we end up rehydrating the application once we get the HTML from the server side. So what Qwik is suggesting is, why don't we send, like, anyway, in the server side, we are executing our application. So you got all the information. So what is missing in the existing or the current framework is, we are not passing those information to the client, or somewhere the information is getting discarded. That's where the client need to download the JavaScript and do the execution and everything. So what Qwik does is, they are serializing all the information which a browser requires in order to make the application interactive, and embed those information inside HTML and send it to you. So it's like, boom, there is no hydration. You just get the HTML, that tada, your application is ready to go and use. You can use it. And they are doing this by sending very less JS code. Very less as in 1 KB of JavaScript. Just trust me, just 1 KB of JavaScript, irrespective of your application side. When you load for the first time, it's just going to be 1 KB of JavaScript. But I mean, it's very interesting, isn't it? But the question again, how, right? So that's when the progressiveness comes in. Well, before we see about what is progressiveness, let's go back to the current approach. So in the current approach, what is happening is, a lot of time there is a eager downloading and eager execution of the component is happening, right? And most of the times, it's not even necessary. What do I mean by that is, say, like, imagine you are having an e-commerce site and you have this logout component, and the other components like, searching for a product, adding a product to the cart and buy button, everything. But the chance for the user, as soon as you hit the page, as soon as you enter the page, to go and click the logout is very less, right? But still, since that part is there on your DOM, or since it's part of your render DOM, what framework thinks is like, okay, it's part of the render DOM. Now I need all the components and all the props related to this particular components. So I'm going to download all those files. So this is what happening in the current approach. Even say like you can, we can try with lazy loading also. Even there, the same problem appears in the lazy loading. Lazy loading component makes sense unless the component is not part of your render tree. So as soon as it's as long as it's a part of your render tree, say like it's visible in your DOM, then the framework ended up rehydrating the application. So what Qwik is proposing, what is the Qwik approaches? They are not doing anything. They are literally doing nothing, and they are just waiting for the user to make the interaction. As soon as they make the interaction, then they are going and downloading the particular JavaScript which is required for that particular component. So basically, what they are doing is they are just splitting your code into gazillions of chunks, and they are just sending each and every chunks as the user interacts, as based on the needs. What do I mean by that is, like, this is your entire application, but the user just goes and just clicks only the header component. So what I'm going to do, what Qwik is going to do is, like, whatever code, JavaScript code is required to for that particular header component alone is going to get downloaded. Again, it's going to get downloaded. There is no hydration is happening here. I know, like, it's all theoretical, I know. So time to jump into demo. One second. So yeah, this is the application. So it's nothing. I just have a counter and it has a default value of 10. So I have a button to increment the counter value and I have a button to show the alert. Let me also show you the code. Yeah, I think it's visible, right? You can judge me for the light team later, but yeah, this is the code, and trust me, this is not React. I know a lot of you guys must be thinking, dude, this is React, but it's not. But why it looks so similar to React is because Qwik also follows JSX in their application in order to provide the continue the current developer experience which we are having. So here's the code. It's pretty straightforward. We have the store is nothing but as similar as the use state thing we are having in React. So basically it's a state, and then I'm just printing the output store.count, and I have a button. On click of that button, and I have a function to increment the counter value, and then I have another button which is the show alert button, where I'm just having the code to show the alert, right? So now let me go back to the output. If you see here, I just removed wheat here because since it's on dev mode, by default it will show a couple of JS files. But if it's in prod mode, there is no wheat files. Because if you remember, I told like there is no JavaScript file will be downloaded when you hit the Qwik application for the first time. So let me reload again. Literally no JavaScript code. And another thing I spoke about resumability is that they are serializing all the information from the server and embedding it into your code, right? So let me go here. So this is the show alert. This is the button component, and you can see on click looks like some customized attribute, right? And there is no function. Instead, it has some path. So the path is nothing but it stores the path of that particular chunk of the chunk of the code will be moved to a separate file. That path has been mentioned here, and I told like there will be 1 KB of JavaScript will be alone downloaded. So that code is this. So this is actually taking care of as like the progressiveness, which is as we make interaction, we have to download the particular JS code which is required to make the particular interaction, right? That will be taken care by this Qwik loader. And here is the like the state information. You can see the counter value is 10. You can see like the 10 is also present here. So basically they are sending you all the information by encoding it on your HTML. Okay, now let's go back here. Let me click show alert. So it's working fine. And also you can see there is one file which got downloaded. So if I click this, so this has the code for that particular alert component, which I've written here. So this code is getting called from here. So that's what written in this component attribute as well. So see, this is the code. The code for this particular event is entered here. So if I search for this particular file name also, you can see the same file is what getting downloaded here. See, the same file. So next is I'm going to click increment. Now you can see two components or two files are getting downloaded. One has the code to increment the counter value. Another is basically the app component, because obviously we are ending up refreshing the UI. That's why the app component is getting downloaded. But the beauty of this is, if I refresh and try, when I click the show alert, only one file is getting downloaded, which just has, to show, which has the code to show the alert, and the app component is not getting downloaded because Qwik understands, okay, just alert is what I'm going to show. So there is nothing is getting updated on the UI. So the app component doesn't need to get downloaded. So this is the magic behind Qwik. And one more thing, like, like the question is like how Qwik is able to, chunk these codes. How does it know this code can go to a different chunk and this can go to a different file? That's when this dollar symbol comes in. So you can see this dollar symbol. So in this application itself, I think 3 places we have. So in Qwik, they have something called Qwik Optimizer. So what it does is, when you're executing your code, the Qwik Optimizer looks for this dollar symbol, and any expression comes after this dollar symbol will be moved into a separate file, and that can be imported dynamically as the user interacts. So that's the magic. That's why we are able to achieve that progressiveness. Yeah. Anything else I missed? Yeah, I think that's it. That's it about Qwik. Sorry. Sure.
Isn't this going to affect the user experience? Like every time, I mean, sometimes you talk about, let's say, I load a page, right? I want to keep things ready so that when the user is taking action, I want it to be as smooth as possible.
Okay.
So it's like we are doing everything on demand. I click on the alert and then it's fetching and then doing the operation.
Yeah. So the question is like, will it affect the user interaction as we are downloading everything on demand? So the thing is, what's happening here? They are doing prefetching. So they are doing prefetching. So and of course, it's just downloading the downloading the JavaScript code. It's not doing the hydration here. And prefetching by mean. So like maybe I can show you the Qwik Builder application. It's not happening. Okay, it's fine. So the thing is like they have something called user client effects, which is somewhat similar to our user effect. It's a hook. What that hook does is, so if you don't add any dependency and if you write any logic inside this, so it's like whenever the component is visible on the viewport, you just, that time only you are supposed to download this. So this is what happening behind the hood in Qwik, along with this progressiveness. So there won't be any delay. Like it is asynchronous in a way. And what they are doing is like prefetching, all the prefetching they are doing using service worker. So the main thread is untested. The main thread has the code it's needed, and they are not touching the main thread. And whatever prefetching they want to do, they are doing it over the service worker. So you don't get to see any delay also. Yeah.
So suppose a user action actually causes a lot of elements on my application to change.
Okay.